The Black Korean heritage dramatic orchestral music swells with tense strings, a heavy heartbeat pulse, and subtle piano undertones. The screen fades in from black to a softly lit but sterile doctor's office. Soft rain patters against the window. Scene 1, a beautiful 38-year-old black woman named Jessica Thompson sits frozen in a sleek leather chair, her elegant black blouse slightly wrinkled from nervous twisting. The neurologist, Dr. Alina Ramirez, slides a thick medical folder across the polished oak desk. Jessica's manicured hands tremble as she opens it and reads the stark words early-stage Alzheimer's disease aggressive progression expected. Projected 2–3 years before significant cognitive decline. Her full lips part in silent shock. Tears well up and spill down her warm brown cheeks. She whispers brokenly to herself, "Daniel, Grace, my bobbies, I can't leave you with her. Not like this. Not when I might forget your faces." Quick emotional cut two joyful children, 11-year-old Daniel with his curious eyes and science books, and 9-year-old Grace with her paint-stained fingers and bright smile laughing, and chasing each other in a sunlit kitchen filled with family photos. Scene 2, late night in their spacious Atlanta mansion. Jessica stands quietly at the doorway of her children's shared playroom-turned-bedroom, watching them sleep. Daniel is curled up with astronomy posters on the wall behind him. Grace clutches her favorite teddy bear tightly, her small chest rising and falling peacefully. Jessica's voice cracks in a barely audible whisper filled with fierce maternal love. "I have to know the truth about Janet before the illness takes me. I have to protect you both, even if it means breaking my own heart." Tense cut to the dimly lit living room downstairs. Jessica stands alone, staring at her phone screen showing her identical twin sister Janet's contact photo, the same warm brown skin, same full lips, same expressive eyes, but with a colder glint. Jessica's face hardens with painful determination as she grips the phone tighter. Scene 3, in a hidden safe house cabin on the outskirts of the city, Jessica sits alone at a makeshift desk with multiple monitors. She carefully installs and tests hidden high-definition cameras throughout her family mansion via a secure app. On one screen, Janet is seen smiling sweetly at the kids during a recent visit. Jessica leans in, eyes narrowing, and mutters with steely resolve, 3 months. "That's all I need to see who you really are, sister. For Daniel and Grace, I'll do anything." Music builds to a dramatic crescendo, then slowly fades into a softer, suspenseful tone. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel where we bring you the most emotional, twist-filled family dramas that keep you watching until the very end. If those opening scenes already have your heart racing, and you're completely hooked on stories about a mother's unbreakable love, shocking betrayals, and justice that hits hard, do me a huge favor right now. Smash that like button if you believe family should always come first. Share this video with friends or family who love powerful, real-life-inspired tales. And hit subscribe with the notification bell turned on so you never miss our weekly viral stories. Your likes, shares, and subscriptions help us create more content like this every single week, and we are so incredibly grateful for every one of you. Now let's dive deep into today's full story. Titled Jessica buried herself to protect her kids. 3 months later, she appeared and sent her twin to jail. Chapter 1. The devastating diagnosis. The morning sunlight filtered gently through the tall, floor-to-ceiling windows of Dr. Alina Ramirez's upscale neurology office in downtown Atlanta, casting long golden beams across the polished hardwood floors and expensive abstract art decorating the pale cream walls. The room was designed to feel calming. Soft classical music played barely audibly from a hidden speaker, and a small potted orchid sat at the corner of the desk in a pristine white ceramic vase. Everything about the space was intended to soften the hardest blows. But for Jessica Thompson, the 38-year-old successful marketing executive who had built her life on discipline, precision, and the fierce love she poured into raising her 2 children alone, that warm golden light felt cold, harsh, and brutally unforgiving, like a spotlight she hadn't asked for, illuminating the one fear she had carried quietly in her chest for months, but had never dared speak aloud. She sat perfectly still in the sleek black leather chair, her posture elegant yet rigid, dressed in a simple yet sophisticated navy blouse and tailored charcoal pants that spoke of her hard-earned professional success. Her hands, usually steady and confident when closing major client deals, orchestrating school fundraisers, or braiding Grace's hair at 6 in the morning before the school bus arrived, were clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had turned pale. She had known, somewhere deep in her bones, that today's appointment would change everything. She just hadn't been prepared for the weight of that change to feel quite so absolute. Dr. Ramirez, a kind-faced woman in her mid-50s with gentle silver streaks in her dark hair, and a compassionate demeanor honed from 30 years of delivering difficult news with dignity and grace, adjusted her glasses slowly and spoke with professional gentleness, mixed with the quiet sorrow of someone who truly cared about the person sitting across from her. "Jessica, I'm truly sorry. The MRI scans, the detailed cognitive assessments, the genetic markers, and the comprehensive blood panel all confirm it without any doubt you have early-stage Alzheimer's disease. Given your relatively young age and the aggressive neurological markers we're seeing in the imaging, we're looking at a faster progression than the typical presentation in older patients. Within 2 to 3 years, we may begin to see significant memory lapses, increasing confusion with daily tasks, difficulty recognizing even the most familiar faces, challenges with problem-solving and executive function, and potential personality shifts that may be difficult for your loved ones to process emotionally. We can and absolutely should begin slowing the symptoms immediately with medication, rigorous cognitive therapy, strict lifestyle adjustments, and structured daily routines. But as you already know, there is still no cure. Jessica's breath hitched sharply in her throat. The words landed like physical blows, not sudden or explosive, but slow and crushing, the kind that knock the air from your lungs so completely that for several long seconds you simply cannot find it again. She was only 38 years old, turning 39 in just a few short months. A proud, determined single mother who had raised her two beautiful children completely alone since her beloved husband Marcus's tragic death in a rainy interstate collision 5 years earlier. She had rebuilt herself from that devastation with quiet ferocity, built a stable, joyful, loving home filled with daily laughter, homemade soul food that filled the kitchen with warm aromas every Sunday, weekend park trips where they flew kites and picnicked lazily under old oak trees, and endless hands-on encouragement for Daniel's budding obsession with space and science and Grace's breathtaking artistic gifts that covered every inch of their refrigerator and hallway walls with bursts of color and imagination. Now, this diagnosis threatened to steal all of it, her sharp memories of every single milestone, her ability to be fully present as her children grew into themselves, her very identity as their anchor, their safe harbor, their fiercest protector. "But I still feel mostly like myself on most days," Jessica protested weakly, her voice trembling with fresh hot tears beginning to roll down her warm brown cheeks like quiet rivers. "I remember every detail: Daniel's 11th birthday party last month with the rocket-shaped cake and all 7 of his friends crowded around the table, Grace's favorite bedtime story about the magical paintbrush that brings drawings to life, the exact way both of them smell after playing outside all afternoon like fresh-cut grass and warm sunshine. How can this be happening so soon? I'm supposed to be there for their middle school years, their first heartbreaks, their college applications, their graduations." Dr. Ramirez reached slowly across the wide, polished oak desk and gently but firmly squeezed Jessica's trembling hands, her own eyes glimmering with genuine empathy that went beyond professional obligation. "That is the especially cruel nature of catching it this early, Jessica. You are still entirely and beautifully yourself right now, sharp, loving, present, capable. But we must begin planning ahead immediately and with real urgency. Strong support systems are absolutely critical for both you and your children. Do you have close family members who could realistically step in and help care for Daniel and Grace when the time comes? Family. That single word dropped into the center of Jessica's chest like a cold, heavy stone thrown into still water, sending anxious ripples through every layer of her. Her only living close relative was her identical twin sister, Janet Thompson. From birth, they had shared everything visible: the same warm, deep brown skin that caught the light like warm bronze, the same full lips that curved into identical wide smiles, the same large and expressive eyes framed by thick dark lashes that could communicate everything with just one glance. Perfect mirror images of each other even now as grown women, frequently mistaken for one another at school pickup and community events. But beneath the surface, they had always been worlds apart in values, in choices, in the quiet daily work of being a decent human being. Jessica had been the responsible one, the driven one, the college honor graduate, the devoted wife, the community volunteer who organized back-to-school supply drives and mentored young girls in her spare time. Janet had drifted through adulthood chasing fleeting excitement and easier paths, bouncing between unstable jobs, calling Jessica late on Thursday nights for bail money, emergency loans to cover overdue rent, or a warm couch after another relationship dissolved into chaos. And yet Jessica had always answered, always opened the door. Blood was blood, she had told herself year after year. Surely when the moment truly mattered, when the stakes were as high as two small, motherless children, Janet would step up. Surely somewhere beneath the self-serving choices and the closed-off heart lived the sister Jessica had once braided hair with and shared a bed with during thunderstorms as a little girl. That evening, back in their spacious and beautifully decorated family home on the quiet, tree-lined outskirts of Atlanta, Jessica moved through the familiar rooms like a woman haunted by a future she could already feel reaching for her. She paused longest at the doorway of the children's shared bedroom, one hand pressed lightly against the doorframe for support. 11-year-old Daniel was fast asleep beneath his navy comforter, surrounded by astronomy posters of nebulae and spiral galaxies, his model rockets arranged carefully on the nightstand, his curly black hair wild and free across the pillow. Beside him, 9-year-old Grace slept with perfect peace, her small arms wrapped protectively around her worn teddy bear named Mr. Sprinkles, her paint-stained fingers still faintly colored from a watercolor afternoon, her round face soft and untroubled in the quiet dark. The sight of them, their smallness, their complete and trusting vulnerability, sent a love through Jessica so profound, an aching that it was almost unbearable to hold inside her body. She sank slowly and silently to her knees beside their beds, silent tears falling onto the colorful patchwork quilt as her hands reached out to gently stroke first Daniel's curls, then Grace's forehead. "My sweet Bobbies," she whispered into the darkness, her voice thick with a determination that had already begun to harden into something unshakable. "I won't let this illness rob you of a safe and loving home, not if there is anything left in me to fight with. I have to know the truth about your Aunt Janet before I can trust your future to her. Even if learning that truth ends up breaking what's left of my heart, I have to do it. For you." Chapter 2, The Painful Decision. Planning to die over the next 2 emotionally grueling and sleepless weeks, Jessica channeled every ounce of her grief, fear, and maternal ferocity into action. She began transforming a trusted old college friend's unused lakeside cabin on the quiet outskirts of the city into a fully equipped, private monitoring base, a safe house that would serve as her hidden headquarters for the 3 most painful months of her life. Working alongside a discreet and highly vetted private investigator she had found through a trusted attorney contact, she oversaw the careful installation of high-definition cameras and sensitive directional microphones in every significant area of the family mansion. These covered the grand living room with its gallery wall of cherished family photographs, the warm kitchen where they spent so many evenings cooking and talking and doing homework at the island, the children's bedrooms where bedtime routines and late-night conversations happened beyond anyone else's view, the home office where financial documents, wills, and trust fund records were stored. and the wide backyard with its swing set and wooden treehouse where Daniel had once proclaimed he was going to be the first person to set foot on Mars. A sophisticated and fully encrypted live feed system was set up so that only Jessica could access the footage from her password-protected laptop at the cabin. No one else would ever see a single frame unless she made that deliberate choice. She practiced her staged collapse for hours in front of the cabin's full-length bathroom mirror, perfecting the sharp gasp, the convincing buckle of the knees, the controlled fall, the flutter of the eyelids. It had to look completely authentic even under the scrutiny of trained emergency responders arriving in a moment of chaos. The plan, in its entirety, was as follows. Stage a dramatic and very public medical emergency at a location filled with witnesses. Have Dr. Ramirez, who had listened to Jessica's full story with growing emotion and had agreed, after considerable moral wrestling and a substantial donation made in her name to Alzheimer's research, to sign the necessary paperwork declaring death by sudden brain aneurysm, officially declare her gone, disappear completely and silently for exactly 3 months. During that period, Janet would step in as emergency temporary guardian under the provisions already written into Jessica's legal will. The children would grieve what they believed was a sudden, irreversible loss. And from the shadows of her safe house, Jessica would watch every interaction, every private decision, every unguarded expression, building a complete and undeniable record of her sister's true character under genuine pressure. In the quiet solitude of the safe house one night, with only the soft sound of lake water moving against the dock outside and a single warm lamp casting amber light across the walls, Jessica sat before her camera and recorded a video message for Daniel and Grace. She wore no special outfit, just a soft gray cardigan and her hair loose around her shoulders, because she wanted them to remember her face exactly as it always was, unceremonious and entirely hers. Her voice, when she spoke, stayed remarkably steady despite the tears running freely down her cheeks. My sweet Daniel, my beautiful Grace, Mommy loves you more than all the stars in the night sky that Daniel loves to count, and all the colors in Grace's paintings put together and multiplied 1,000 times. Whatever you see and hear in the coming months, please hold on to this truth with both hands. I did this only because I love you with every breath in my body. This is my way of protecting you when I might not be physically able to later. Stay strong, my Bobbies. Stay kind. Mommy is always watching even when you can't see her. She saved the video on an encrypted external drive and stored it in a hidden location known only to herself. Then, the night before the staged collapse, she poured every remaining drop of her love into one last perfect evening. She cooked all their favorites from memory, and from the heart crispy golden fried chicken with her grandmother's secret seasoning blend, creamy baked mac and cheese loaded with sharp cheddar and a toasted golden crust, collard greens simmered slowly with smoked turkey, and a touch of apple cider vinegar, the way Marcus had always loved, fluffy skillet cornbread, and a deep dish peach cobbler with vanilla ice cream that melted immediately on contact with the warm filling. They laughed until their sides ached at Daniel's corny science jokes. They danced wildly and without self-consciousness in the living room to the old-school R&B playlist Marcus had built on his phone years ago, the one Grace had memorized entirely. They ended the night in a long, slow group hug on the sectional couch, all three of them fitting together in the way they always had perfectly, like a puzzle made for exactly this shape. Daniel, perceptive as always, had looked up at her with a small frown and asked quietly, "Mom, why are your eyes so watery tonight? You keep looking at us like you're trying to memorize us." Jessica had pressed her lips to the top of his head and smiled with every last performance she had in her. "Happy tears, baby. You two make me so overwhelmingly happy that sometimes it spills out. That's all. At 2 in the morning. When the house had gone completely still, she sat alone on the edge of her bed holding an old photograph she had kept at the back of a dresser drawer for years. She and Janet, at maybe 6 years old, both in matching yellow dresses with pigtails and gap-toothed smiles, arms flung around each other like there was no safer place on earth. "Please don't fail them," she whispered into the dark. "Please." Surprise me. Then she deleted the photo from every device and every cloud backup she owned, one tap at a time. From this moment forward, Jessica Thompson had to cease to exist. Her children's lives depended entirely on that. Chapter 3. The final goodbye staging the collapse. The plan unfolded on a picture-perfect Saturday afternoon at Riverside Park, a sprawling green space beloved by families across the neighborhood. Full of picnic blankets, laughing children, and leisurely foot traffic that would provide exactly the audience needed. Jessica, Daniel, and Grace had spent the first hour flying their brightly colored kites beneath a cloudless April sky, running across the open grass with their faces tilted upward, their laughter carrying on the warm breeze like something that deserved to be preserved in amber. Janet had been casually invited along under the relaxed pretense of a spontaneous family outing. She arrived looking relaxed and outwardly cheerful in a floral sundress, carrying a store-bought fruit salad she had not made herself, her hair styled in the same sleek updo as Jessica's in a way that always prompted double takes from strangers. Without any warning whatsoever, Jessica gasped sharply, her hand flying to the side of her head. Her knees buckled. She went down onto the soft grass in a controlled, practiced fall that looked, to every single witness present, completely and terrifyingly real. "Mommy, Mommy, wake up," Grace screamed, her little voice cracking with raw, immediate terror as she dropped her kite string and threw herself down beside her mother's still body, shaking her shoulder with both small hands. "Please wake up, please, please." Daniel's face went white. He was already running before his next breath, sprinting toward a cluster of adults near the picnic pavilion, and screaming at full volume in a voice cracked with desperation, "Someone help. My mom collapsed. Please help us." Within 4 minutes the park had transformed, sirens cutting through the warm afternoon, paramedics moving fast across the grass, onlookers pressing forward with hands over mouths. Janet pushed through the crowd with her face arranged in a flawless expression of horror and sisterly anguish. "Jess, oh my God, someone tell me what's happening." "Jess, please." From the stretcher, lying motionless and listening to Grace's inconsolable sobs with every nerve in her body screaming at her to sit up, to reach for them, to end this right now. Jessica held the stillness. Her heart hammered so loudly she was certain someone would hear it. She pressed her fingernails quietly into her palm and thought only of their faces at 7 and 9, at 5 and 3, at the hospital the day each of them was born. This is for them. Every second of this is for them. The official story traveled instantly through the community's text chains and social media feeds. Jessica Thompson, beloved single mother and respected marketing executive, had collapsed at Riverside Park from a sudden brain aneurysm and had been pronounced dead despite every effort made by emergency crews. The funeral was set for 4 days later. Flowers arrived at the house within hours. Neighbors brought casseroles and condolence cards. The children's school sent a formal letter expressing the community's grief. From the safe house, Jessica watched through the camera feeds as Daniel and Grace clung to each other in the living room after the house filled and then emptied of visitors, both of them eventually falling asleep on the couch holding hands in a way that made her press her fist hard against her mouth to keep from making a sound. She watched and did not look away. She had chosen this. She owed them the full weight of witnessing what it cost. Janet, in the center of every room, received the grief and the sympathy with practiced grace. She pulled the children close in front of every witness, smoothed their hair, made all the right promises in a voice that hit every note perfectly. "We're going to be okay. Your mama would want us to be strong. Auntie Janet is here for you always." Jessica leaned toward the screen, her tear-streaked face lit in the blue glow of the monitors. 3 months, she said quietly to the empty room. "That's all I need. Show me who you really are." Chapter 4. The funeral and Janet's takeover. The morning of the funeral arrived in shades of iron gray, the sky low and heavy, with a steady rain that seemed genuinely to share in the morning. Umbrellas opened slowly across the cemetery like dark flowers blooming in reverse. Friends, coworkers from the firm, neighbors from the cul-de-sac, parents from the children's school, and members of the church Jessica had attended since before Daniel was born gathered solemnly beneath the sound of falling rain around a gleaming white casket blanketed in white lilies. Daniel and Grace stood beside Janet in small, formal black outfits that made them look too young and too exposed to a world that had taken too much from them already. Grace clutched a single lily in her paint-stained fingers. Daniel stood straight with his jaw tight, working very hard to be the 11-year-old man he thought was required of him. Janet's eulogy was a masterpiece of timing and controlled emotion. Her voice broke in exactly the right places. She spoke of childhood memories, shared birthday cakes, matching Halloween costumes, sleepovers during thunderstorms. She invoked Jessica's dedication as a mother with language that drew quiet sobs from the assembled crowd. And she closed with a solemn, public vow: "I promise, in front of every person here who loved my sister, that Daniel and Grace will be raised with the same profound love and selfless devotion she showed them every single day of their lives. That is my sacred promise to her memory and to these beautiful children." The crowd responded with nods and tearful murmurs of support. Two women near the back embraced each other. A man in the third row bowed his head. From the safe house cabin, Jessica watched the recording of the eulogy twice, leaning so close to the screen that her breath fogged the corner of it. She saw what no one in that crowd saw: the brief, barely perceptible upturn of Janet's lips when she turned from the podium and thought the cameras had moved on. It lasted less than 2 seconds, but Jessica had been reading her twin's face for 38 years, and that micro-expression sent ice through her bloodstream with absolute certainty. This was not grief. This was the beginning of a transaction. Janet moved into the mansion within the week, claiming the master bedroom on day 2 without discussion, placing her own perfume bottles on Jessica's vanity and her own clothes in Jessica's closet, as if clearing space for a new tenant. On the third day, she called Maria, the beloved nanny who had been with the family for 6 steady, warm, indispensable years, who remembered the children's allergies and their nighttime fears, and which songs helped Grace fall asleep, and dismissed her on the spot without severance, without explanation, without even letting the children say a proper goodbye. "We don't need outside interference anymore," Janet said flatly when Grace asked in a small, confused voice where Maria had gone. "I'm from a blood family. That's all these kids need now." The changes accelerated with alarming speed. Daniel's after-school science enrichment program, the one where he had recently been selected as team captain for the regional robotics competition, was canceled. His private math tutoring sessions followed. Grace's Saturday art classes at the community center, which the instructor had described as the most naturally gifted student she'd seen in 15 years of teaching, were eliminated on a Tuesday without any warning given to Grace herself. The little girl found out when she came downstairs that Saturday morning in her painting smock with her supply bag ready, and Janet told her without looking up from her phone, "That's done now. We're not wasting money on hobbies." Grace had stood perfectly still in the kitchen doorway for a long moment before walking back upstairs in silence. The financial betrayal began quietly and then grew brazen. Jessica watched on the encrypted feed as Janet sat at the home office desk late one evening, transferring funds from the children's college trust accounts in careful, calculated increments, never one large sum, always several smaller ones into personal accounts held in Janet's name alone. On a phone call with the unsuspecting family attorney, Janet's voice was warm, reasonable, and entirely false. "It's just temporary reallocation for household stability during the adjustment period." Jessica would absolutely have approved this. She always put the children's daily comfort first. What Jessica observed of the children in those early weeks broke her quietly and thoroughly, piece by piece. Daniel stopped talking at dinner. He would sit with his food barely touched, staring at the empty chair where Jessica had always sat. Grace stopped drawing. Her art supplies sat in a neat row on her shelf, undisturbed, their lids still on. The color had gone out of both of them, and Janet made no effort to find it again. Jessica pressed her hand flat over her heart in the dark of the safe house cabin and felt the full cost of what she had set in motion. "Hold on," she whispered to their faces on the screen. "Just hold on. I see you. I'm right here." Chapter 5. The hidden watchful betrayal exposed. By the end of the 5th week, Janet had stopped maintaining even the performance of a committed guardian. The sympathetic public face deployed so convincingly at the funeral, and during the first days of condolence visits, was no longer needed now that the casseroles had stopped arriving and the neighbors had gone back to their own lives. What remained, captured in steady high-definition clarity on Jessica's monitors, was something rawer and colder. The photographs were the first to go. One Tuesday afternoon, while the children were at school, Janet moved systematically through every room of the mansion, removing framed family photos from walls, mantels, and shelves. She packed some into boxes without labels, threw others directly into trash bags, and replaced them with a small, carefully arranged collection of new prints. Janet alone on vacation. Janet smiling with the children in posed shots taken in the first week. Janet at the center of every frame. By the time Daniel and Grace came home and noticed the bare spaces on the walls where their family's history had lived, Janet had already rearranged the living room to accommodate a new flat-screen television purchased that morning on one of Jessica's credit cards. The men started appearing sometime around the third week, different ones. Late at night, let in quietly through the side entrance after the children had been sent to their rooms with firm instructions not to come downstairs no matter what they heard. "This is not your business and not your concern," Janet told them in a tone that was not unkind but was entirely without warmth. "Stay in your rooms, doors closed, until morning." Daniel, who Jessica had always raised to speak up when something felt wrong, had knocked on his door and called out once that Grace was upset and couldn't sleep. Janet's response, captured with perfect clarity by the hallway microphone, had been 3 seconds of loaded silence followed by "She'll be fine. Go to sleep." The call that changed everything, the one that crossed the line from betrayal into something criminal and unforgivable, came on a cold, rainy Tuesday in the 7th week. Janet was in the living room with the lights low, speaking in a hushed but entirely audible voice to someone Jessica did not recognize. The conversation lasted 11 minutes. Jessica recorded every second of it. "Once the insurance payout processes completely and we're talking $750,000, I'm done playing house," Janet said, her voice carrying a lightness that was obscene in context. "I'll arrange for the kids to go to foster care or find some distant relatives who'll take them without asking too many questions. I've done my part. I showed up. I grieved publicly. I said all the right things. After the money clears, I want to sell the house, liquidate whatever else she left, and go somewhere warm. Miami, maybe. Somewhere I can actually live my life instead of managing someone else's." A pause while the other person spoke. "No," Janet continued, almost laughing. "She's gone. She can't do anything. She left me in charge. That was her mistake." In the safe house, Jessica sat completely still for a very long time after the call ended. The rain tapped steadily against the cabin windows. The monitors glowed in the dark around her. And then, slowly and with absolute clarity, she stood up, walked to the small bathroom, turned on the cold water, and held her wrists under it until her hands stopped shaking. Then she came back to the desk and began organizing everything, every clip, every timestamp, every bank record, every audio transcript into a file that any prosecutor would find impossible to challenge. The 3 months were almost up, and Jessica Thompson was coming home. Chapter 6. The Return. Justice and Reunion. She chose the same elegant black coat she had worn at the park on the day of the staged collapse. She pinned her hair the same way. She applied light, deliberate makeup not to conceal, but to arrive as herself, fully and unmistakably. The woman who looked back at her from the cabin mirror was not the frightened, grieving version of herself she had arrived here as. She was something harder and clearer, a mother who had spent 3 months watching from the dark so that her children could one day live in the light. The USB drive containing the footage went into her handbag alongside a thick printed folder of bank records, transaction screenshots, audio transcripts with exact timestamps, forged signature documentation, and a 3-page summary prepared with the help of the private investigator. The police had been briefed the previous evening. They would arrive 4 minutes after she did. At 7:15 p.m. on a Thursday in late autumn, Jessica pulled into the driveway of her home for the first time in 93 days. She sat in the car for exactly 30 seconds with her hands on the wheel. Then she got out, walked to the front door, and opened it. The living room came into view. Janet was reclined in the armchair that had always been Jessica's favorite reading spot. A glass of red wine balanced in one hand and her phone in the other, the television murmuring behind her. Daniel and Grace sat together on the far end of the sectional couch, close to each other in the way that children do when they have only each other for comfort, shoulders touching, not quite talking, both of them looking smaller and older than they should have. Daniel looked up first. His face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and then something so fragile and enormous it had no name. Mommy. The word came out as barely a sound. Is that? Are you actually here? Grace turned. And the scream that came out of her high and pure and completely unguarded was the single most beautiful sound Jessica had ever heard in her life. Mommy. You're alive, you came back. You actually came back. She was off the couch before the last word left her mouth, running full speed across the room, and Jessica dropped to her knees in the doorway and caught her daughter with both arms wrapped completely around her, pulling her in so close that Grace's feet left the floor. Daniel reached them in seconds and buried his face in his mother's shoulder, and the three of them held onto each other in the entryway of the home that had been theirs all along, while tears ran down all three faces without apology or restraint. I knew it, Daniel kept saying into her hair. I kept feeling like you were still somewhere. I told Grace I told her I could still feel you. I was always right here, baby, Jessica said, her voice breaking completely. Every single day. I never left you. Not for 1 second. The sound of the wine glass hitting the hardwood floor made everyone turn. Janet had risen from the armchair, her face the color of old ash, her expression rotating rapidly between disbelief, fury, and the dawning calculation of someone realizing very quickly that the architecture of their plan has just collapsed around them. This isn't you were dead. We buried you. There was a funeral, there was a performance, Jessica said, rising slowly to her feet with one arm still around each child. Her voice was entirely calm, entirely sure. One I planned and executed because you gave me every reason over a lifetime to be uncertain about who you really are. I watched you, Janet. I watched all of it. Every transfer you made from Daniel and Grace's college accounts. Every call. Every decision you made the moment you thought no one with anything to lose was watching. She lifted the folder and the drive from her handbag. I have everything, hours of footage. Bank records with your name on every transaction, audio recordings of your conversations, forged documents, all of it organized and already submitted to law enforcement. She paused. The officers outside came with me. Janet's composure finally broke. She lunged forward, not toward Jessica, but toward the door, and found it already filled by two uniformed officers who stepped in with the practiced calm of people who had been told exactly what to expect. As the handcuffs closed around her wrists, Janet turned back to Jessica with her face twisted into something ugly and ancient, something that had been there a long time beneath all the performances. You always had everything. The perfect life, the perfect kids, the perfect house. You had all of it handed to you, and I got nothing I deserved. Some of what you had. You were given the chance to love two children who had already lost their father, Jessica said quietly. That was something. You chose not to take it. The patrol car pulled away from the curb in the dark. Grace pressed her face against the living room window and watched it go, then turned back to her mother with wide, searching eyes. Is she gone for a long time? Yes, sweetheart, Jessica said, kneeling down to Grace's level and smoothing a curl from her forehead. She is. Daniel sat beside them both on the floor, which felt like exactly the right place for all three of them to be. Did you really watch us the whole time? He asked. From wherever you were, every single day, Jessica said. I never missed a day. He thought about this for a moment. Then he nodded once, slowly, the nod of a boy who had already decided that the world, despite everything, could still be trusted. Okay, he said. Okay, Mom. In the weeks and months that followed, the house breathed again. Janet was denied bail. She faced a federal trial with a prosecutorial case so comprehensive, and well documented that her own defense attorney requested a plea deal within the first 2 weeks. Every dollar stolen was traced and fully recovered and returned to the children's protected accounts. Maria was called on a Sunday morning and rehired before the call was 20 seconds old, and she arrived at the house the following Monday with a pan of homemade empanadas and both arms wide open for the children who had missed her every single day. Daniel and Grace began seeing a child therapist named Dr. Wallace, a gentle and straightforward woman who spoke to them like full human beings and gave them language for what they had been carrying. Their progress was not linear. There were hard nights and backsliding mornings and dinners where someone cried for reasons they couldn't fully explain. But there were also, increasingly, mornings that opened quietly and Grace's art supplies spreading across the kitchen table again, Daniel reading aloud from his astronomy books at breakfast, both of them laughing at something private and small between siblings who had only each other during the hardest part. One evening several weeks after the return, Jessica sat with them on the wide porch swing as a warm sunset painted the sky in gold and deep rose. She had decided that they deserved the full truth, not a softened version, not a protected one, but the real story told with the care and honesty that they had both more than earned. She told them about the diagnosis, the fear, the 3 months watching from the cabin, the folder of evidence, the recorded video she had made for them in the lamplight. She told them what she had seen and what she had decided it meant. "I was afraid," she said plainly. "I was terrified that the illness would take my memories before I could protect you properly. That was the truest thing I felt." Grace was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Were you scared we'd be sad? The saddest I've ever been in my life was watching you be sad and not being able to hold you," Jessica said. "I want you to know that." Daniel reached across and took her hand without saying anything, which said everything. She showed them the scrapbook she had made at the cabin during the long, lonely nights, every handwritten letter addressed to future birthdays and graduations and first heartbreaks, every saved drawing and school ribbon and pressed flower from the park, every recorded voice message and video. A complete archive of love built against forgetting. "No matter what this illness eventually takes from me," she said, "this stays. Your history, my love for you, it stays." Grace held the scrapbook against her chest with both arms, the way she held Mr. Sprinkles, the way she held things she was not willing to let go of. "You did all this for us," she said. It was not a question. Every last page, Jessica confirmed. "Then we'll do the next part together," Daniel said. "Whatever happens with your memory, we do it together. You don't disappear again. We face things as a team." Jessica looked at her son, 11 years old, already more than he should have had to become, and entirely enough, and felt something she had not allowed herself in months. Not hope exactly. Something quieter than hope and more durable. Certainty. Not that things would be easy or painless or that the diagnosis would be anything other than what it was, but certainty that these two people beside her were the most extraordinary reason she had ever been given to keep fighting. And that whatever the disease eventually asked of her, it would not take this. Not this moment. Not this warmth between them on this porch in this light. The three of them rose from the swing together, hand in hand in hand, and walked back into the warm-lit house, already talking over each other about where they wanted to go for their first real vacation. Grace voting loudly for any beach, Daniel making the case for something with a clear enough sky to see the Milky Way. The door closed behind them. Through the large front windows, the lights of the house glowed steady and warm against the falling dark. The camera slowly pulls back in a wide, quiet shot, showing the reunited family disappearing into the warmth of the home they have reclaimed, the windows glowing like something that cannot be extinguished. The screen fades to black. Elegant white text appears: "Protect the ones you love at all costs. A mother's love never truly dies, it only finds new ways to fight." Emotional piano and swelling strings music builds beautifully, then fades to silence. End credits roll over a soft, final call-to-action screen. Thank you so much for watching this emotional journey all the way to the very end. If Jessica's story of sacrifice, betrayal, and fierce maternal love moved you, drop a comment right now and tell us honestly. What would you have done in her shoes? Would you have gone to those extreme lengths to protect your children? Hit like if you believe a mother's love truly conquers everything. Share this video with someone who needs a powerful reminder of hope and strength today. And subscribe with notifications on for more powerful, twist-filled, heart-driven stories every single week. We could not create these without you, and we are grateful for every single one of you. See you in the next one. Stay strong, stay loving, and always protect what matters most. Red.